Hey there, fight fans. It's John Pollock here with you. John Ramdeen and Robin Black will be here in just a couple of minutes. In the news today, title implications for Cyborg's next fight. The UFC 160 card continues to grow, and you can make a killing going for Liz Carmouche this weekend. Odds makers have Liz Carmouche down as a plus 775 underdog for this Saturday's fight with Ronda Rousey at UFC 157, with the champion listed as a minus 1,200 favorite. Meanwhile, Lyoto Machida is a minus 230 favorite against Dan Henderson at plus 190, and in bantamweight action, Uriah Faber is a minus 380 favorite up against Ivan Menjivar at plus 315. Another lightweight bout has been added to the ever-growing UFC 160 card set for May the 25th in Las Vegas as Gray Maynard returns to action for the first time since June of last year to take on rising 155-pound talent TJ Grant. I recently spoke to Shannon Knapp, the president of Invicta FC, on the MMA Report, and she discussed the promotion's plans on what weight classes they will be promoting and what is in store for the winner of Chris Cyborg and Ediane Gomez after their April 5th bout at Invicta FC 5.
We have 5 weight divisions, and we're committed to, having a champion in each one. I think in our next event, Invicta FC 6, you'll see the winner, Santos and Gomez fight Marlus Kunin for the title in the 145-pound division.
That full interview with Shannon Knapp is on the MMA Report this week at FightNetwork.com. And finally, we hear from Dan Henderson, who was asked about Dana White's new stance on testosterone replacement therapy. Henderson has been receiving a therapeutic use exemption dating back to 2007 and tells Ariel Helwani he is all in favor of stricter testing for users.
I'm fine with I would love for them to implement a random drug test all the time, for everybody, not just for TRT, but, they can especially hit the TRT guys. It doesn't matter. But, I don't know. I don't think that's probably the major thing that's being abused in the sport, but it's something that definitely needs to be watched a little more. It seems to me that a lot of guys are testing positive, and not just for that.
Joined as always by John Ramdeen and Robin Black. We are counting down to UFC 157 coming up this weekend, and we mentioned the odds there, guys, in the Newsmakers. Liz Carmouche, a plus 775 underdog here. Completely wide odds here. Minus 1,200 favorite is Ronda Rousey. Do you see some money coming in here on Liz Carmouche? I mean, these are some of the most gigantic odds for a main event fight in UFC history.
Well, I had a chance to be at a Pride show in Las Vegas where Terry Sokaju was a minus or plus 1,400 underdog. And what happened? He ended up knocking out Little Nogueira, and the crowd went nuts. That is the appeal about mixed martial arts, is that anything can happen, because quite frankly, we see what the UFC wants to see us with the countdown shows and the primetime shows. We really don't see what's going on behind closed doors in either camp, so anything can happen. And if Liz Carmouche decided to bring in Giva Santana, a guy that's really only an hour and a half away in Irvine, California, this guy is known as the Arm Collector. 13 armbar victories, or 13 armbar victories, 18 submissions. So you bring in this guy to prepare her for Ronda Rousey. I think that's her best game plan.
I could work on something for my entire lifetime, and you could bring in an expert for 6 weeks and totally learn how to defend that. Hey, listen, Sarah Kaufman brought in Sheila Bird, who's an elite armbar specialist, black belt, to learn to defend against Ronda Rousey. And Sarah Kaufman's a much better fighter than Liz Carmouche, and Sarah Kaufman got armbarred. I would say this is as close to a sure thing as there is.
Outside of the top 3 fights on this card, I mean, with the recent news about the 16 fighters being cut, is there a good majority here of the fighters on this card that a loss could be detrimental in terms of facing the axe here? I think me and Robin were discussing this earlier. A fight like Sam Stout and Carlos Fodor, a year ago, I don't think any of us are even giving that some thought. But today, is one of these guys' jobs on the line?
Quite possibly, but it all comes down to how much money they're getting paid. Yes, Robbie Lawler, for example. We know Robbie Lawler's getting paid.
I think he's in must-win territory.
Exactly. The guy's getting paid $90,000. So if he comes in here and doesn't look good against Josh Koscheck, yes, he could be on the chopping block. But for Carlos Fodor, I don't think he's going to be making a whole lot of money in his UFC debut. So I think he's pretty safe, considering the UFC still has their obligations to Fuel and FX and Fox and pay-per-view. So, I mean, it just depends on how much money you're taking home.
What if Big Robbie Lawler does what a lot of people probably would love to see him do and goes in there and knocks Koscheck unconscious? I mean, could you cut a guy like that? It's a spooky time out there. Hey, listen, if you're Court McGee and Josh Neer, one of those guys is getting cut. They both have 2 losses. But the interesting thing about this is those 2 guys are going to fight like their life depends on it, because it doesn't. That can make for some interesting fights.
We also heard there from Dan Henderson. He is all in favor of stricter testing of people that are given therapeutic use exemptions. And you smile there, but I mean, there are people that, I mean, could be given this exemption here, and they are simply bringing their levels up to normal. We don't know, but I think most of us can agree it's a positive, more testing rather than less testing, and just leaving it up to moral obligation that during those 8 to 10 weeks of training camp that you are training at an even keel.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, you can't not test. Like, you can't win this fight right now. Guys will always find a way to get around the system, find a way to try to perform better, whatever they have to do. They'll always do it, but you have to test. You have to at least give them something to deal with. And I mean, Dan Henderson's probably telling the truth. Dan Henderson has never struck anybody as the type of guy desperate to kind of cheat. He's just an old man who needs a little more testosterone. Chael Sonnen, on the other hand, Chael Sonnen will swear up and down, this is great. This guy is probably the greatest television character in the history of television. But I mean, that guy, you got to assume would do what he's got to do.
Lots of stuff coming up. We still have a press conference weigh-ins coming up later this week, and Fight News Now Extra, it continues as we speak.